Well, I don't know if you can hear what I'm hearing, but there's the very satisfied noise of chomping here this morning with this year's crop of lambs. They've had a bit of feed. I've thrown it around the pen basically in various piles they get in there. They enjoy it, and it is the case that these things, morning by morning, they get their breakfast before me. Now, it's absolutely true that farmers get a bad reputation because of the excesses that we hear of in the press sometimes, that we all deplore. Every barrel is likely to have a few rotten apples, and whatever line of work you come across, it's going to be the case. People running outside of their natural responsibilities and what we'd expect to see from them the way they ought to be. But the vast majority, the bulk, the huge bulk, farmers up and down this land are putting their stock before themselves. It's part of the problem I face as a rural chaplain, dealing with people who run into difficulties and problems, that very often they need to look after themselves a bit more. And yeah, the reputation, I'm afraid, is good news in the popular journals, and is snatched up by people who have another agenda for livestock farming. But for the most part, you will find farmers up and down this land today putting their animals before themselves. Now, that all raises this huge issue of why it is that human beings show what's called altruism, putting others, other creatures even, before their own interests. Where does it come from, and what's it about? I'm well aware of the work by Richard Dawkins called The Selfish Gene a long time ago, looking at selecting certain areas of genetic makeup of human beings, and arguing that they were being selfish in looking after other people because they were passing on genes that were similar to theirs. I'm also aware of the problems with that idea. You'd have thought, wouldn't you, that if it was all in your genes, this encouragement to do it wouldn't be needed. If what Dawkins is saying is correct, you wouldn't need to keep reminding people that this is a good thing that needs to be done. It would be there genetically embedded. That seems to me to be the most basic criticism of what the man is saying. For our purposes, it suffices to say that Dawkins' The Selfish Gene is probably out of fashion, and will be going on out of fashion as time goes by. Another trend in thinking that sold a book and got him an award. But really we need to find deeper and more lasting and purposeful ways to account for this historic human willingness that's grown and developed from a certain point in our history to put others before ourselves. As we've said already, it's not a perfect human trait. It's not perfect or universal, and that's why it gets exhorted to. We get encouraged, exhorted, called to put others before ourselves in terms of caring for people and so on. It's something you have to exhort to, encourage people, ask people to do. So you find when the New Testament comes along, you find this putting others before yourself is something that's encouraged and exhorted to a great deal, and there's a reason behind it. So, for example, let's give you an example first, then the reason. Philippians 2:3. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. Human beings need reasons for doing the things we're asking them to do. And in Philippians, Paul sets out the reason for altruism in the Christian faith. And that's that we have ourselves been shown the highest example of altruism, of putting others before yourself, in the Lord Jesus Christ. Came out of heaven, came to earth on a mission to rescue people who, through their own bad choices, had got themselves into a terrible mess, were facing up to a penalty for that they fully deserved, and yet the Lord of glory, who had no sin in himself, came to earth to deal with it. To deal with it in a way that was not unjust, not saying, oh, well, never mind, go away, that's fine, don't worry about it, but actually to pay the moral cost, the price of what had been done, so that justice should be served, and mercy could be received. And to do that cost him powerfully, cost him a very great deal, personal sacrifice for those who didn't deserve it to have their issues resolved. And it's in that way that the Lord of Glory, capable of making things as complex and delicate and beautiful as he has, laid down his life that I might live. And that's the one who, in his inspired word through the pen of Paul, exhorts us in our turn to do nothing out of selfish ambition. Well, he could have stood on his rights. He could have favoured his own interests. He didn't. Do nothing, he says, out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, thinking you're something special. Well, he was, but he didn't think of himself like that, considered himself a servant, took the form of a servant. Rather, he says, in humility, value others above yourself. And if anybody inspires us to do such a thing, it must be him. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. Why? Because of what has been done for you if you're a believer, and because of the example, the awe-inspiring example that he set. That's my word for the week. God bless you. May he give you joy in following him in this way in the coming week.